underestimated me for most of my life. I can't tell you the number of times I've walked into a room and have not been taken seriously or been overlooked because of my age and my gender. It's as if somehow being a young woman makes it impossible for me to have any thoughts or experiences that could influence and impact the grown-ups. Yet the reality is, I even used to believe that too. In what now feels like a different lifetime, the thought that I could influence change in any way, let alone by changing laws and impacting people's lives nationwide, seemed completely impossible. But one of the things I've discovered is sometimes we confuse scary with impossible, and we should always do what scares us. One of the first times I can remember deciding to do something that scared me was when I was 17. My mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer earlier that year and was about halfway through her treatment. Like almost anyone living with a chronic illness can relate to, she had good days and bad days. And some days were so bad she didn't even feel well enough to make a phone call. This was one of those days. She had been in severe pain and asked me to come home from school during my lunch period to help call her doctors. After 45 minutes, which was my entire lunch period, I still hadn't been able to talk to anyone that could help me. As I sat on hold listening to that annoying elevator music, I couldn't help but think about missing sixth period again and wondering if my math teacher was going to fail me my senior year for missing so many classes. Still on hold, I looked at my mom lying in bed and tried to give her a comforting smile, but I felt tears coming instead, so I ran downstairs where she couldn't see or hear me cry. As I headed back up, her silver cell phone caught my eyes against the carpet and stopped me in my tracks at the bottom of the stairs. See, my mom was a nurse practitioner, and she worked for one of the large hospital systems here in San Diego. So not only was her physician, Diane, her colleague, she was also her friend. And I knew Diane's personal cell phone number was in her contacts list. As I stared at the phone standing at the bottom of the stairs, my mind raced in disbelief about what I was contemplating. Would I get in trouble for calling Diane's cell, but she was at work? Would she be mad? Would I get my mom in trouble? Would Diane even be able to help me? I was scared, and I did not want to do something I wasn't supposed to. But I finally gave in to my desperation to help my mom and decided to make that call. That day, I found out for the first time that I was willing to take action and do whatever I had to for the things I believe in, even when they were scary. Within a half an hour, Diane had arranged for my mom to get everything she needed, and I was back at school by seventh period with my mom resting and relieved at home. While I was so grateful for the help, I could never get over the fact that I felt like this was wrong. What did people do who didn't know someone that could pull strings for them? What about people who didn't even have friends or family to help make calls on bad days? Those who were rendered voiceless in their deepest hour of need. I couldn't let it go. I knew something had to change, and I knew the only way to make systemic change was through policy. But even though I understood the process, thanks to Schoolhouse Rocks, I thought it was impossible for a 17-year-old like me to do something like that. I didn't know it then, but this experience would propel me into my passion and change my life. Not even 2 years later, while I was volunteering for Susan G. Komen San Diego, I got one of their newsletters, which included an invitation to participate in a state lobby day up in Sacramento. I wasn't really sure what that meant, but as I continued to read the email, I started to get excited. It felt like this was finally an opportunity to do something about those questions and issues I still hadn't been able to let go of from my experience of helping my mom. So I booked a flight. About a year earlier, my mom had completed her original treatment right before my high school graduation, and we thought life was going to go back to normal. But as the saying goes, sometimes man plans and God laughs. During my first month of college, we found out that not only had her cancer come back, but it had spread. We were also told she probably only had 6 months to live. As an only child to a single mom, that was a tough pill to swallow at 18. But at the point where I was planning to attend my first lobby day, we were already 4 months past what we jokingly called her expiration date. You know, because if you can't make and laugh at inappropriate jokes in these kinds of situations, when can you? So when I called my mom to tell her about my upcoming trip, we both thought it was something important we should do while we still could. So after arriving in Sacramento with the other 80 or so attendees, we had a day of training before any actual meetings at the Capitol. But even though I had practiced and felt prepared the night before, that morning as I was heading to the buses that were going to take us to our meetings, I started to doubt myself and my ability to use facts, statistics, and my story to convince my representatives to support these bills we were lobbying for, even though I full-heartedly believed in them. But after a quick run-in with the Komen San Diego executive director at the time and some words of encouragement from her, I was back on track. I got on that bus and I was feeling pumped. I was ready to change the world. I got to my first meeting, I confidently introduced myself. I gave the representative a firm handshake, made eye contact, and then I was silent for the rest of the meeting. I repeated this at every single meeting until sometime in the afternoon. So much for changing the world. At this particular meeting, the representative went through the same drill as the others, shaking our hands as we introduced ourselves until he reached me, where instead of the usual nod and nice to meet you, he stopped and made a comment along the lines of, "Wow, you're really young. What are you doing here today?" As his comment sank in, I began to feel offended, and then even a little defiant. What did my age have to do with anything? I knew the bill numbers and their purposes just like everyone else. I had a story to share just like everyone else in my group. And then before my brain knew what my mouth was doing, I blurted out, "I'm here to speak for those who can't speak for themselves." I held my breath, realized that was actually an acceptable answer, and sighed in relief because I thought it was over. Then he did something else I didn't expect. He motioned to the seat next to him and asked me to tell him more. For the rest of the meeting, my group let me stumble through the bill numbers and their summaries and all the reasons we wanted his support. And even though I had sweat through my shirt in about 4 different places by the time I got up to leave, yeah, true story, I felt amazing. My group couldn't get me to shut up in the last 2 meetings after that. I was soaring high. I had finally used my voice that I had originally discovered out of desperation 2 years earlier, and it felt so good. I even got 3 of our reps to agree to support our bills. Unfortunately, that year, the governor vetoed all 3 of our bills. But I learned something valuable. I learned that my impact and ability to do what I wanted was not determined by my age. I learned that my knowledge and my experiences were separate from my age. I could never be too young or too old or the wrong age whatsoever to do what I wanted at the Capitol, in school, in a career, or in life. So then, a few months after my big lobby day debut, I heard about a Komen San Diego Public Policy Committee meeting. Yep, you guessed it, I RSVP'd that I would attend. I had just assumed it was going to be a big meeting based on the number of people who had attended lobby day. I expected to find a large meeting space filled with people where I planned to sit in the back unnoticed unless I thought of something intelligent enough to raise my hand and say out loud. This must have been another time where my plans made God laugh, because what I found instead were 5 people sitting at a small round table, all facing each other. Oh, and not just people, but adults, like real adults. They were all older than me, and in my 19-year-old mind, that meant they were all eons smarter than me. Most of them were wearing professional business clothes with briefcases at their feet, and this made me instantly self-conscious. My jeans seemed to be getting tighter, and the backpack I had on went from weighing 5 pounds to 40. I just wanted to get out of there before anyone saw me, but as I turned to run, a woman stood from the table and said, "Oh, you must be Lizzie," as she pulled out a chair for me. I felt like I had the wind knocked out of me as I realized she was the executive director I had met at lobby day, and this was, in fact, the room I was looking for. I felt so out of place. I frantically tried to think of a reasonable excuse to leave, but nothing came to mind. As I stood there frozen, staring at this rolling office chair she'd pulled out for me, something in my head just clicked. I was doing to myself the exact same thing that representative had done to me in Sacramento. I was underestimating my own ability. Suddenly, that defiance I had felt in Sacramento flooded back through me, along with memories of calling my mom's medical teams on their personal cell phones and convincing my reps to support these bills. In that instant, I saw myself differently. Not as a 19-year-old or a college student or even as the daughter of a breast cancer patient, but as an advocate, as someone with knowledge and experiences that could be used to leverage and impact real change. As I took a seat at the table that day, I did it for the first time knowing I had earned it. The seat wasn't reserved for someone who looked a certain way or was a certain age. It was there to be filled by someone who had chosen to do the things that had scared them, had taken action when it was needed, and had been a voice for the voiceless. I sat tall in my seat that day, and I not only stayed for the meeting, I contributed my thoughts and ideas, which helped lead us to success in getting all 3 of those same bills passed the next year. I'll never forget that day. My life changed that day. I changed that day. That was the day I realized I was starting my impossible. Never in my wildest dreams could I have ever imagined that from fear, I'd be propelled into my passion and my purpose. At first, it started as a means to an end, and then it was a way to honor and remember my mom. But now, it's my passion, purpose, and profession. Today, I'm the Director of Mission and Public Policy for Susan G. Komen San Diego. I get to continue to be a voice for the voiceless. I get to help others use their voice and earn seats at the table. As I look back on the years since first starting my impossible, I can remember moments where I felt uncertain. And times I caught myself starting to underestimate my ability. And I've had to remind myself that my age has nothing to do with my ability, that I myself have earned a seat at the table. And I've been blessed to have amazing people in my life that continue to give me encouragement in those moments of uncertainty. But one thing I am unequivocally certain of today is that it's never too early or too late to start your impossible.